I think we do need to be concerned about the current situation. I mean, you just looked at the figures from stock markets, where there is a degree of uncertainty out here. I think what we also need to do is to look at, what is the experience of people on labour markets? What are people's working lives looking like right now? And what can they reasonably expect their working lives to look like in the next couple of years? And there, I would say the defining characteristic is real uncertainty. I think we're in a moment of extraordinary change. We talk about technology in particular, and I think this breeds a certain disorientation in people's thinking. I think that affects our politics as well.
And perhaps a bit of anxiety, too, over what happens to wages. I mean, that's something we've been talking about. I know various studies have shown great employment figures as the economy strengthened, especially up until now, yet wage growth hasn't been exactly where the economists want it to be. What do you think is behind that?
Look, wages are not following either the tightening of labour markets, and they're certainly not following productivity growth, and that's been the case for not a matter of years, a matter of decades, actually. So people don't actually feel, even if unemployment figures are looking better, I don't think they really feel the improvement in their pay packet, and therefore, in their living standards. What's behind it? Well, I think you just have to look at the mechanisms that we traditionally use to fix wages. And the answer is, I think, that those institutions, bargaining institutions, collective representation, are not as effective as they used to be. And people are working in new settings. We're seeing a real diversification of work forms, that direct employment relationship, that permanent relationship between employer and employee, where there were wage fixing mechanisms which tended to, I think, do a little bit better in moving people forward. They're not there so longer. So you get this rather weird situation where governments are sometimes exhorting employers to, hey, give a hike to the wages, we need this.
Right.
But it doesn't happen in the mechanism.
And you can't separate this problem, if you will, from what's going on in the greater conversation here about populism, broader frustration, with feeling that perhaps you won't be better off than the generation that went before you. So what's the solution then, Dad?
I think the politics of populism, if we can call it that, is the populism of the forgotten man or the forgotten woman. And I think that applies, both sides of the Atlantic, for example. So what do you do? I think you really got to look at our labour markets, the institutions of our labour markets, and start investing in them again. We've just put out a report on the future of work where we say, look, if we want to move forward and create the sort of perspectives for the future that we want, let's invest in people. That means skills, that means there's social protection. Let's invest in the institutions of the labour market. All of these mechanisms we've developed for a very long time to make sure that the benefits of growth are shared out at a reasonable basis of fairness, and then invest in the jobs of the future and where they're coming from. And that's also a big question.